I don't know. Take it. I don't know if it's around. You'll take it. You'll take it for whatever source you want. There's a couple sources that said a little different things. So take it for what it's worth. But we're going to be talking a little bit about 124. Which, does anybody know what was happened in 123, or what time frame DNC 123 is? It's around 1839. So it's 2 years. So from DNC 132, sorry, 123 to DNC 124, there's a 2-year gap span. There's a 2-year span of what stuff that happens in the church. So we don't have a lot written down. We have some things that people have said in different journals and things like that. I'm not going to touch too much into that as well today. We're going to talk a little bit more about 124 and what was going on. Does anybody know where 124 happened? Nauvoo. Perfect. What does Nauvoo mean in Hebrew? Nauvoo was a swamp. It doesn't mean swamp in Hebrew. It was a swamp at the time, which is kind of ironic because in translation, I think there's different translations. There's like beautiful place around there. Beauty to be translated to as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today to start. So if everybody could actually turn, open their scriptures or their phones, whatever, DNC 124, verses 2 through 7 is where we're going to start. While you're getting there, I'm going to read just this kind of intro paragraph to this. I'll read this for you while you're turning there. It says, as difficult as the last 6 years have been for these saints, things started to look better in the spring of 1839. The refugee saints had found compassion among the citizens of Quincy, Illinois. Guards had allowed Joseph Smith and other leaders to escape captivity in Missouri. And the church had just purchased land in Illinois where the saints could gather again. Yes, it was swampy, mosquito-infested land, but compared to the challenges the saints had already faced, this probably seemed manageable. So they drained the swamp and drafted a charter for a new city, which they named Nauvoo. It means beautiful in Hebrew, though it was more of an expression of faith than an accurate description, at least at first. Meanwhile, the Lord was impressing the prophet with a sense of urgency. He had more truths and ordinances to restore and needed a holy temple where he could crown his saints with honor, immortality, and eternal life. Thus, in many ways, these same feelings of the faith and urgency are evident in the Lord's work today. So we're going to talk a little bit today about, we'll kind of go over like 3 kind of big topics that are in throughout. There's lots of things. DNC 124 is a long, long thing. I am not going to get to everything today. So you should take a peek at it this week or read it, or hopefully you've read some of it last week as well. So the biggest thing we'll talk a little bit today about here is we're going to talk about a little bit about preaching the gospel with it. We'll talk a little bit about patriarchal blessings. We'll also talk about some other stuff in there as well too. We'll kind of go back and forth between a couple of different verses. So if everybody goes to verse 2, can I have someone start to read verse 2 for us? I'm the type of person I like to read from the scriptures because they teach way better than I ever can. And this class definitely participation is not required, but
of Zion, which shall be polished with refinement, which is after the
similitude,
of a palace.
All right, keep going. Can we have somebody read 3 and 4 for us? Yeah.
This proclamation shall be made to all the kings of the world, to the 4 corners thereof, to the honorable president-elect, and the high-minded governors of the nation in which you live, and to all the nations of the earth scattered abroad. Let it be written in the spirit of meekness, and by the power of the Holy Ghost, which shall be in you at the time of the writing of the king.
What's being said right here in these first couple verses? What's he telling them to do? Proclaim the gospel. Oh, good job, missionaries. I thought you'd pick up on that. Yeah, but who does he tell to proclaim the gospel to? In verse 3, it tells you all the kings of the world, the 4 corners thereof, the honorable president-elect. This is everyone. This is literally. It's not just people that they're around. This is go teach it to everyone. Go teach it to those people all over. I'm going to butcher this story because I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but there was a story of a missionary going into it, and I can't remember if I learned this from while I was in England on my mission. But they were talking about a guy went into Africa and he baptized this whole tribe of Africa. And all came because he went and talked to their king or their leader of that tribe. And he went preached the gospel to them and was able to baptize this whole nation or this whole tribe of it. So I think a lot of that similarity in my mind runs true when I read this. Is like, you're here to teach the gospel to everyone. It doesn't matter status, anything like that. The gospel can bless everyone. And I think that's something that I have seen in my life a lot. In England, as I've told you before, I refer to it a lot. It's a huge melting pot. There's people from all over the world, like a million, all these different countries. And you get to talk to them, and you get to teach them the gospel. And I think it's the coolest thing. They come from every different type of background. And the more you get to talk to them and teach them, the more you learn about them. I think the more respect I have for them as well. The more I understand that God really wants to proclaim His gospel to every single person in the world. Let's keep going. Does somebody else read verse? Verse. Where we saw 4. So let's read verse 5, 6, and 7. Can someone read verse 5, 6, and 7 for me? Yeah, go for it.
For it shall be given you by the Holy Ghost to know my will concerning those kings and authorities, even what shall befall them in the time to come. For behold, I am about to call upon them to give peace, the light and glory of Zion, for the set time has come to favor them. Call ye therefore upon them with a loud proclamation and with your testimony, fearing them not, for they are as grass, and all their glory as a flower thereof which soon falleth, that they may be left also without excuse.
I really like verse 7 there. It says, call ye therefore upon them with loud proclamation. Maybe that's because they have a loud voice. My wife says I'm annoying, so actually they have a loud voice. My voice carries. Testimony, fearing them not. I think a lot of times nowadays in our world, we think of proclaiming the gospel is this: going out, standing up on a box, preaching the gospel with a loud voice to everyone. What are some ways nowadays that we can preach the gospel?
There you go. Hope you remember how to do it.
Yeah. I think that's a great one. I think especially in a world today where there's a lot going on, I think being a peacemaker is a prime example of sharing the gospel. Yeah, go for it.
Just being friendly, just smiling at people that you don't know. I mean, that makes them wonder. It may ask them, they may ask questions because they're, why are you so happy?
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. Totally.
Just in a normal everyday conversation with even a stranger, I myself, from my experience, I'll chat with somebody at the restaurant, and suddenly I introduce just a little bit of the gospel to somebody, and then they wind up asking me, "What are you? What church are you from?" And then that's when the conversation gets into where I can bear my testimony of the church.
Go backwards. And we got to smell.
I know this is just Jesus Christ, but I'm saying, your testimony through your actions, through the help of people, that's how you show that you have a testimony.
This seems to be a service to others. Look for people that need some help and show them kindness and that's where they're gonna get that from.
Yeah, totally. I think all these are really good opportunities to share the gospel. I think a lot of times there's an everyday question that comes up for probably most people throughout once you return on Monday. It says, what did you do this weekend? I think how many of us shy away from saying what we did on Saturday and not on Sunday? I think as members of the church, we err in that. There's a big error in that. I think for myself, I've tried to be better about saying, oh, I went to church this on Sunday too. So we went and I have like 1 million kids, I feel like, that are crazy. So we did a ton of kid things on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we went to church. And someone talked about this. They talked about being kind to people, being a peacemaker. They talked about, we were learning in the scriptures about when the saints, the early members of the church got persecuted. Things like that. How many times in our lives do we sit there? I am like guilty of it 100%. We sit there and someone asks us that and we just say what we did on Saturday or what we did on Friday night. Because I didn't want to bring up what it was on Sunday. I'm scared what they would say. I'm nervous about it. I'm fearful. Even though the scriptures teach us a lot of times, it says fear them not. I think I'm for sure guilty of it, 100%. And I think the more I've read this, especially 124, especially in the very beginning, I think the more as members of the church, we can share the gospel in ways that we don't normally do, which is just by talking about it on a daily basis. I think sometimes, a lot of times in our lives, we get busy and are hectic, and there's a million things happening, and that is true. That's okay. I think that's part of life. I think it's learning to balance that. But I think in that balance, we also need to balance the gospel aspect of things rather than just the worldly things. You do have to have worldly things to live. You're not going to be able to provide rent, food, things like that without work and things like that. You do have to do that. That's okay. God knows that. But I think just as much as he knows that, he understands that the gospel aspect needs to come just really, I would say first, but a lot of times it's hard. I would say the gospel aspect needs to be a big part of your life as well too. And that means not shying away from it. That means not being nervous to say what you did on how was your weekend. Oh, it was great. Saturday was fantastic. Okay, well your weekend consisted of Sunday as well. So, any other thoughts on these verses? Yeah.
You're doing great, by the way. I haven't been in your class, but this is, wow. There's a lot of things that I could say, but I like the idea that you're saying about priorities. I asked a member of the church one time, okay, so I got a little problem with priorities. Do I prioritize what God says? Do I prioritize my family? Do I prioritize my work and having my job taken care of? And he goes, yes. So, because the thing is, we have to prioritize by the moment. Can we squeeze God into every moment? Probably a lot better, like you were saying we can do. But there is a sense of priority that we should be looking at everything that we do. Now, I'm gonna back you up a little bit.
Go for it.
I like what you were talking about in the beginning when you talked about we've got 3 presidents in this country and decided to chaos. And you look at the Saints, and they've been kicked out of 2 different places, very militarily like being thrown out. And now they've got this swamp that they're trying to live in and make this best thing in the world. And what does the Lord give them? He gives them 145 verses worth of stuff he wants them to do right now. And I think there's something we need to make sure we get there, and that is the Lord understands we are busy people. And he says, you know what? So am I. Let's get to work and get done as much as we can. And so I think what he's saying to them here is, okay, you've got your list of things that you've got to do. I get that. Well, we got some other things to do. And what does he tell them first to do? He says, I want you to write a proclamation to the kings and everybody throughout this entire world. All the way they've ever got to is the 12 going to England and a few local places around. That's the best they do for ministering yet. I mean, for teaching. Now he's saying, I want you to handle the whole world now. Let's take this up a level, like a major level, and you do it while you're doing all this other stuff. And I don't want to dwell on this too much, other than to get us to think, we think we're busy, and we are, and we've got all these struggles and things we're trying to do, and we say to ourselves, I can't go to church, I can't do this calling, I can't make this meeting, whatever it is, because I got too many other things. And no, you can. The whole idea about our relationship with God is he's trying to help us to stretch. He's not trying to make us the best human being we can be. He's trying to make us like himself. And for that, we've got to be willing to stretch and push and make ourselves go a little harder than maybe we would normally think we should have to.
I can't remember if it was Edelman or it was President Nelson. But they talked to him one time and they said, how do you balance things? Is there such thing as a perfect balance? And he said, no, there's no such thing. He goes, you cannot multitask, you can't balance. He goes, it's impossible. He says, wherever you're at that time, you have to be 100% in. And this is something that I try to do. I'm not very good at it, but I try to do. He says, when you're at work, you're 100% at work. You're all in. You're getting everything done. Because when you're at home, you're 100% at home. When you're at church, you're 100% at church. He goes, a lot of times we're distracted by different things. And I think myself, I'm not great at it. I have 3 kids. Sometimes work's texting you or calling you while you're at home and trying to be there for your kids and also be at work and all that stuff. It doesn't work out. I think the biggest thing though is what comes in verse 9. And I like what you're saying, because I'm sure there was a lot of apprehension, right? We had just been kicked out of a couple places earlier. I mean, I'm sure it's still fresh in their mind. Well, Missouri, like everything that's gone on, Kirtland, everything that's gone on previously is in their minds fresh. Like, hey, we've kind of been booted out of these other places. The first thing we really want to do when we get here is really just go preach the gospel and tell everybody all these things that's going on. Like, or are we going to get kicked out again? Like, I mean, I'm sure if it's happened twice, there's some people, in my mind, I'd probably be thinking, well, it's happened 2 times before, like, it's probably going to happen a third. We're going to get kicked out again and have to go somewhere else. So why would I even do that, right? I'm sure that was probably in the back of their minds. But let's read verse 9 in 124. Can someone read verse 9? Yeah, go for it.
And again, I will visit and soften their hearts, many of them for your good, that you may find grace in their eyes, and that you may come to the light of truth, and gentle to exaltation for lifting up of Zion.
I think this is the part we forget a lot of times, is although we're trying to do everything we can, right, and there's a lot of aspects that we're supposed to do in the gospel, what is the Lord doing? What does it say? In like that very first thing, what does he say he's doing in verse 9?
Softening their hearts.
He says, I will visit them and soften their hearts. I will visit. I think as much as we can do is, in my mind, very minimal to what the Lord can do. So a lot of times in our lives, we think we're getting there, we're progressing, we're getting along. But when in reality, the Lord is the person that's bringing them along, whether that's sharing the gospel, whatever that is in our lives. I think there's a lot of aspects that the Lord is playing behind the scenes that we don't even notice or we don't even see. Yeah.
We are playing the puppet's hands.
Yeah. I think we're all being molded at that for that reason.
So what countries then, after this proclamation was given out to the 20,000
Yeah.
saints are sitting there, and certain individuals are asked to write all these different things out to the different countries, the kings and the rulers and all that kind of good stuff. What nations ever helped the saints? None that I know of.
No,
Okay, so to me, when I look at these proclamations and things that we're talking about, it seems to me as though these revelations were given to the saints to bolster them and soften, other people's hearts may have been softened, to soften the saints' hearts, because at the end of the day, the financial positivity of the church have all come from tithes and offerings. It came from the people who were over in England, all the saints, the early saints that were over there. A lot of the money that came to help build the temples and different things were coming from, those areas, from the outreach, from the mission that were going on at that time. So sometimes when I take a look, hearts have been softened in the nations, but nobody came to the same faith at that time.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying. Yeah, like financially, yeah, from that perspective as well. Which I think a lot of times, right, it can be tough. I think there's a lot of things to realize, like I'm sure every one of us in here has been through hard times financially. And he understands what goes on with that, right? There's a lot that goes on to it. I think there's also a lot of relying on the Lord for that. And I think we can even talk about priorities. I can remember when me and my wife were just barely married. We were living in a BYU married campus ward. I was going to school. She was providing for me while doing all that stuff. So she dropped out of school and was just providing. I remember looking, I don't know why I'm getting emotional, sorry. I remember looking at our finances. I thought I was going to do accounting, all this stuff. Like, I can crunch numbers like nobody's business. I was crunching numbers, and we should have been losing like $700 every single month. losing. Should have been coming out of any little savings we had when we got married. We should have been losing money to a T, like max. Like there's no questions about it. Hands down, 100%. And I, excuse me. And you know what the funniest thing is like, this is just for us. This is just like my view on things, but we really believed in paying tithing. And now tithing isn't talked about in here, so I know we're getting a little off track. But we really believed in paying tithing. And we paid our tithing diligently to a T. Every single, as soon as we got it, that was the first thing that came out was tithing. There's no questions asked, nothing. It was just how we were raised and what our views we had, beliefs. I will tell you that we did not lose $700 every month. That we made money while going to school. You can tell me whatever you want, but I know like 100%. Sorry, I'm emotional. But like it was from Heavenly Father. So I think a lot of times, like in our lives, I'm just trying to relate like myself to them. Is like, yeah, they aren't getting stuff financially, and I think a lot of times you feel like it isn't going to work out because I am not getting stuff financially. But I think our view on it, where we put our aspect is, okay, well, am I going to go all in for the Lord? And now you can come to see, like we'll talk about it a little later, right? They're building a temple. They built a Nauvoo house. They didn't even finish the Nauvoo house. It was supposed to be done. It was supposed to be this big grand house housing around 300 people, like 120 feet long, 40 feet wide, things like that, 4 stories high. They didn't even finish it. Here's another aspect of, oh, well, we didn't finish this, or we got kicked out of here in the time. I think there's a lot greater things to learn when I believe there's a lot greater things to learn in their lives is by not accomplishing something a lot of times. A lot of times when we accomplish it, we just think it's easy. Oh, it was all us. We did it, everything like that. I think a lot of times the Lord is teaching us things that He is behind everything. But I agree with you. That would be tough. That would be tough from their standpoint. But I think there's a lot of stuff that the Lord is happening on the back side of things.
But that's what I think was
Softening
happening.
hearts.
Yeah, it was softening hearts.
Totally.
People were taking faith in the fact that the
Yeah.
Lord was speaking and sharing that to Joseph as a revelation, and they were getting strength. And by that, we're going to go out and proclaim this, and it gave them strength. We're going to go
Yeah.
do these things.
I agree with you 100%. I totally agree. I think it gave them, like you said, the strength and the ability to see we are getting help, right? There is help from inside. Because sometimes in a lot of our lives, you feel like there's not help. There's time in every single person's life when you have felt alone or you have not felt help. But I think that's the cool thing about the gospel is there's always help. The Lord will always help you. Doesn't matter where it's at, what's going on, He will help you. Whether it's from one side or behind you or the other side, it's helping. Stuff is working out. Let's go to verse 28. We could read verse 28 because they're talking about, they go on a little bit, they'll talk about this Nauvoo house, this house for travelers and for settlers, for people to come and settle in on things. I'm going to read just a little quick version as everybody's turning to ordinances and kind of things like that. It says, let me get to it. It says, Lucian woodwork designed a building that would have 2 large wings, each 120 feet long, 40 feet wide, and rising to over 4 stories tall. It would have room enough to accommodate 300 visitors. George Miller, Lyman White, John Snyder, and Peter Hawes served as the trustees of the project, raising money and overseeing construction. Local businessmen and church members bought $50 building stocks to offset the cost. In a grand ceremony on October 2nd, 1841, construction began with the laying of the southeast cornerstone. They worked on the Nauvoo house and Nauvoo temple simultaneously. They cut lumber, quarried stone, and donated labor for both buildings. After Joseph Smith's death, Brigham Young continued to urge the work to continue, but by the fall of 1845, it was clear that both buildings could not be finished before the Kings would have to leave.